Good evening, it's Amy again. So I have done my introduction the other day, and I told you guys I wanted to cover something every day that was for children who are on the autism spectrum. So my daughter has autism spectrum disorder, previously Asperger's and sensory processing disorder on the spectrum. But tonight I wanted to cover 504 plans and IEPs. These are very important for kids in school so that they can be able to have access to different resources, and legally the schools are required to provide this. I know in North Carolina, where I'm at, this is the guidelines that the schools must abide by for specifically a 504, an IEP. So first off, people ask, what's the difference in an IEP and a 504? So an IEP, an individualized education plan, is usually recommended for ones who are on the further end of the spectrum, need a little more assistance, and a 504 plan can include the same things as an IEP, but it's still individualized. You meet every year and change it for that grade, and also you can change it at any time. So with contacting the school and telling them you need to revise it. So an IEP is a little more extensive. They sometimes can provide, more one-on-one help. It may be helpful. Most children who are in special education classes have an IEP instead of a 504. It doesn't mean they can't have a 504, but most have an IEP because it is a little more individualized and broke down into more categories. Now remember that you can't just go to the school and say your kid needs a 504 or an IEP. It typically requires proof of a diagnosis, like on a prescription or on letterhead from the doctor, stating what diagnosis your child has, and if they're seeing a therapist, psychiatrist, psychologist, or if they have any recommendations they feel are good for the school, that's always good for them to include. They are going to also ask you, because they understand that you are with them more than that physician or therapist, etc., and that your child's needs more than they do, so they want to combine the two together. They're not just going to do yours and forget what the doctor has to say, though, because the whole reason that you're going to be able to get it for your child is having that proof of diagnosis, that professional was able to give that diagnosis. So they have the 504 Rehabilitation Act, and it is it's a federal law. From Section 504, bans disability discrimination from public schools, charter schools, colleges, private schools that get federal funding, and it covers students of all ages. College kids have this. My daughter's in high school in 9th grade. She still has a 504. It will continue to follow her. Now this year she's making straight A's and she is in regular classroom. Next year she's actually been asked to be in honors. She was this year, but she was too scared to do it. So it doesn't mean that it will hold them back in anything. It is put in place to help them, such as when she takes her state mandated testing, she goes to a smaller testing site outside of her classroom where there's only usually anywhere from 6 to 10 kids, so that she doesn't feel pressured by her peers to feel like she needs to rush through the test. They can even read the questions to your child. She has what they call Mark in the Book, which apparently they passed last year for every student, which is wonderful. But Mark in the Book is so that she didn't have to fill out bubble sheets when she was little. What kid can halfway figure out a bubble sheet with their answers and not miss a line or mess up by answering the question in a book and putting the answer on a bubble sheet? So she has always been allowed to write her answers in the book, and then they have a teacher who has to fill out the bubble sheet. So we need to be very appreciative of all the extra things our teachers do behind the scenes. So, because they have to go through to be graded on those bubble sheets. Or now, luckily, testing's really become computerized. But she still gets to do it in a private, smaller setting. Untimed to an extent, but basically it's untimed so that she does not feel rushed and can complete her test at her pace and be able to make a good grade and not feel like she's in the same classroom with those same peers that she's working with and given extra time or whatnot and still feels rushed. It's separated. And she's never felt embarrassed by that or anything because of how they handle it. So people who, the 504 protects people who have a disability. This means physical or mental condition that substantially limits a major life activity, reading, learning, social skills. Okay, covers almost all conditions, and basically a 504 can cover kids who don't qualify under the special education law, which gives them an IEP a lot of times. My daughter was offered an IEP when she was going into kindergarten, and at that time I declined and asked for a 504 because I didn't want her to go into special education classes, because I felt like I wanted her to have the regular classroom setting to not feel like it was holding her back. She needed to be exposed to the extra social stuff in normal school, and for her that worked. I have friends that doesn't work. You have to figure out what's best for your child. But just remember that, this covers physiological disorders and conditions, cosmetic disfigurement, anatomical loss of one or more of the body systems. It's, neurological, muscular, skeletal, special sense of organs, respiratory, speech organs, cardiovascular, reproductive, digestive, genitourinary, lymphatic, skin, endocrine, everything, pretty much. And so the definition of a physical and mental impairment also includes any mental or physiological disorder. It does not include all specific diseases and conditions that may be physical and mental impairments because of the difficulty to cause a complete list. It's basically what it says. And major life activities, things that would make a child qualify for 504, caring for oneself, bending, performing manual tasks, speaking, seeing, breathing, hearing, learning, eating, reading, sleeping, concentrating, walking, bodily functions, bowel, bladder, brain, immune system problems. It goes on and on and on to, like I said, includes a lot of things. It doesn't mean that if your child has something tiny that you should jump on trying to get a 504 to get your kid special accommodations. Remember that this is put in place for a reason, to be helpful to those children who need it. And if your child needs it, ask for it. So if your child's diagnosed with migraines, they may make accommodations for them to be able to go to a quiet place when they have migraines, and try to prevent stress or triggers that cause migraines. It doesn't mean that they're going to be able to have half days at school because they have migraines, or things like that. But it does help with doctor's appointments and getting, if I know that at my child's school they have 2 semesters. They can only miss 5 days a semester. If they miss more than that, then they have to go to summer school, or attend at Saturday school. And so if they have a 504 or an IEP and they're going to an appointment that has to do with that, such as psychiatrist, psychologist, etc. My daughter's includes some stuff where she sees a gynecologist and reproductive health, and so it covers those things because they're all covered under her disability diagnosis. So just keep those things in mind. And so what they are required to do is give reasonable accommodations to students with disabilities so that they can have equal access to and benefit from school and school activities. They do not charge for these programs. They just have to make sure that they're accessible. They do not charge you to have this done. And they don't have to change any programs. They just have to make sure everything is accessible to your child, that is accessible to everyone. Everything includes everyone, that nobody's left out. Like many schools have the no one's left behind thing now. So public K through 12 schools, including charter schools, must also provide a 504 plan when a child's disability interferes with the ability to learn. This is a part of a child's right to a free, appropriate education. So accommodations can include extended time on test, sensory breaks. They give my daughter sensory breaks. If she feels like she's getting sensory overload, she asks to, her school's calling it now, I need to take five. And basically she's allowed to take 5 minutes to go and go to the library, or, she can't go wander the halls, but she has a specific pass for her. She has to make sure her teacher is aware. Some teachers have even given her, a secret motion or whatnot to say, I'm stepping away, without actually having to raise her hand and tell other kids I'm stepping away because I'm in overload. One of them had like a little cone she put on her desk, and she'd put it on the corner of her desk, and her teacher knew that she had stepped away for her take 5, and it doesn't mean she has to take full 5, but and they can take more than 5 if they need to, but they want them to just take a break, take a few minutes, step away. Assistive technology, audiobooks, or noise canceling headphones to help with noise. And then speech therapy or study skills instruction. A lot of schools have PT, OT, ST. They have all the therapies available through school too, that they come to the school and do some therapies with them. So it doesn't necessarily mean that, due to funding and stuff, they may not have ones available. But they will try to find resources, and also, like I said, they will allow school board approval to count that absence not as an absence. Basically, a school board policy accommodation to remove that and it not count against them missing school to go to therapy. So I hope that is very helpful. You can go to www.ecac-parentcenter.org. That's the Exceptional Children's Assistance Center, and they are based out of North Carolina. And like I said, I'm not sure how specific, how different it changes by state. But this is very helpful website. I will type that in the comments below, and you guys can go to that website. It has a lot of information about different assistance, and so they're all about just empowerment for families, improving family life, and helping families together. So we are very lucky here that we have a children's hospital that has a family resource center that provides a lot of information. So just an example of my daughter's IEP from 8th grade that I have here in front of me. And for privacy, I won't show a copy of it, but it basically says that by regulation, the Section 504 committee is a group of knowledgeable people, and it has each person listed. The child will be in the meeting, the mother in the meeting, usually the school counselor and the principal, sometimes some other people from the school board. And it says that the district verifies that the 504 committee is a group including a person with knowledge in each of the required areas. Ariana's dominant language is English and English at home, and the district